everyone, Lewis aka Spider-Man 1991 here with another weekly comic book review. I'm bringing my weekly reviews back for the month of March. If you guys like it, I will keep doing it. Let me know feedback in the comment section below. So this is basically comic where I talk about the comics that I bought and read on March 14th, 2018. The order for this review is I will review my least favorite comic first, going all the way to what my pick of the week is. Before I get started though, I just want to point out that if you're lucky in your local comic shop this week, you might find a special free reprint of World of Krypton #1. This was a miniseries done right after Crisis on Infinite Earths when the Superman titles were being relaunched, and it was written by John Byrne, giving us an idea of what Krypton was like, I think, approximately 200 years before Superman's birth, where basically we follow his ancestor Van-El, and that's also apparently going to be the premise for the show Krypton, which premieres on the Sci-Fi Channel next Wednesday at 10/9 Central. Not sponsored, by the way. But if you're able to get this, I recommend checking it out if you plan on watching Krypton. Let's get into the actual comics. Bottom of the barrel, Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps #40. Alright, the Green Lantern Corps continue their rescue mission to save Hal Jordan. Unfortunately, they get beaten down by the House of Zod. I'm going to be perfectly honest, the reason this is low on the list is because I'm starting to get really tired of this series. When it started off at the beginning of Rebirth, it had a really strong opening arc with the Sinestro Corps. Then we got into another good arc where the Green Lantern Corps and the Sinestro Corps try to work together. But ultimately, lately after that, the series has been sort of declining for me. And to be honest, once this arc ends, I might... And also because of this arc involving General Zod, it's weird seeing General Zod outside of a Superman title for me, just because he's so recognized with Superman, especially now that he's got his wife Ursa and they have a son Lore, which is a nice parallel between them and the Superman family. I know the next arc is supposed to be dealing with the Dark Stars, but I'm not sure if I want to keep reading it after this arc. Wonder Woman #42. Wonder Woman's twin brother Jason returns after a week of absence, and he's got new armor which apparently allows him to control his elemental powers. However, Jason has doesn't have a clear memory of where he got it. The only thing he remembers was being surrounded by 7 huge giants who gave him the armor. And also in this issue, Wonder Woman finds Grail and is able to use the lasso of truth on her to figure out to learn what Darkseid's plan is, which is to basically raise a new army from relics using the power of relics from the old gods. And apparently Darkseid's quest is now taking him to Themyscira. There's a lot of interesting stuff in this issue, but really Wonder Woman interrogating Grail is the only thing that like moves this plot forward. I mean, first off, Jason comes back and he's got new armor, and I feel like they should have waited a bit more, like maybe until towards the end of this arc, but he came back in like 2 issues and it was like, oh hey, you were only gone for a week. I mean, the way they ended it with Jason disappeared, I thought, okay, it might be a while till we see him again, but you know, they just brought him back quickly again, and it didn't sit well. I mean, and also James Robinson, he's a good writer, it's just sometimes his work is very slow at moving the plot along. Like there's slow progress, and that's why it's on this spot on the list. Darth Vader #13. This takes place in between the end of Revenge of the Sith and before A New Hope. Emperor Palpatine sends Darth Vader to Mon Cala to help strengthen the Emperor's voice. To basically Palpatine is starting to realize that the Empire needs more of a voice, that people need to realize that the Republic, the Senate, is really just not that powerful anymore, and that's really the Empire that controls everything. So he decides to send Darth Vader to Mon Cala, which is currently where the Empire is currently trying to negotiate a deal with the resources on Mon Cala. While there, Vader investigates a rumor that the Mon Calamari king has a secret advisor who's possibly a Jedi. And we get a really cool cliffhanger at the end of this issue where we do see the hidden Jedi advisor somewhere on Mon Cala. He or she is basically wearing their hood up, so we don't know who it is, and right as they're like getting the message, that Jedi suddenly goes Skywalker, and that's where the issue ends. It had some really cool, this issue had some really cool scenes. It had a really strong opening where we see Vader sort of having a dream where he's reliving his fight with Obi-Wan and Mustafar, but this time he's Darth Vader and he's able to use the dark side of the Force to raise lava and just drown Obi-Wan in it. So that was a very strong opener. However, the thing that really weighs this title down is just this issue in particular. It was just really heavy with dialogue and stuff because we had to set up the whole politics of the issue and stuff. Bright side, we do get to see Governor Tarkin. So this might be the beginning of how Tarkin and Vader sort of hate each other. Yeah, but if you like Darth Vader, totally check the title out. This is Astonishing X-Men number 9. After saving Psylocke and X, who is the by the way, X is the resurrected Professor Charles Xavier. They saved the two from Proteus. The X-Men then track Proteus to a small Scottish village, and while there, Proteus figures out a way to extend his reality-altering powers to the citizens of the village, that they can like do whatever they want. Unfortunately, it turns into a complete disaster when one man wants to kill another man in the village. What's interesting is that there seems to be sort of a larger plot at work here, because this arc started like right after the first arc, which involved the Shadow King. Now we're dealing with Proteus, and throughout the last arc and this arc, we see Bishop sort of consulting one of the ways that the world could end, the various ways that the world could end. And right now the book is sort of in a scenario that leads to this apocalyptic event known as the Mind Killer Apocalypse. And that makes sense because Shadow King's a telepathic villain. Proteus, not really a telepath, but he does sort of affect the minds of others. So there's that. But I really like this issue because there was a scene where, in order to get Proteus's influence off of Psylocke and X, first Archangel is able to create a barrier with his metal wings because Proteus's powers don't really work well with metal. And then Logan gets the idea that since X is in Phantom X's body, he must have a healing factor. So he just stabs him with his metal claws. And then when he pulls out and Proteus is gone, Charles is like, when I took over his body, I rewrote it. I don't have a healing factor. And he just passes out from his wound, and then Wolverine there's a silence, and then Wolverine just says, oops. I mean, that was a very funny scene. It was a good way to sort of reveal that now that Charles Xavier is in Phantom X's body, he doesn't have the healing factor anymore. So yeah, that was pretty fun. I do like the idea of the bigger story arc. So if you like X-Men stories that are complicated, that sort of lead to a bigger arc, then this is something that you should check out. Next up, Titans number 21. We finally find out who the big bads of this arc are, and they are the Brain and Monsieur Mala. Also, throughout the issue, Roy continues his investigations into what Mala and the Brain are up to. However, Roy doesn't know it's exactly them. He just knows that somehow their plan involves using a new street drug. And of course, he tries to convince the other Titans, especially Donna, about what happened, that, you know, this is real and there's some huge drug thing going on, but no one really believes him. They all think Roy has fallen off the wagon and he's using it again. And this leads to an incredible fight scene where Wally West and Dick Grayson show up to try to like talk Roy and get him to rehab, but Roy doesn't believe it, and he ends up taking it down both Nightwing and the Flash, which was just impressive. I really like the way Dan Abnett wrote Roy Harper in this issue. It was fantastic. It feels like this is like the gold standard of Roy Harper that everyone loves, and it's very cool that he gets sort of the spotlight in this arc, which is nice. Because really in Titans, the spotlight when it started off, the spotlight was on Wally, then it went to Donna, and now it's on Roy, which is just great. And right now they're doing a good job showing what's going on with the Titans now that they've disbanded by order of the Justice League. Overall, this arc is very interesting. I really can't wait to read what happens when the other Titans sort of realize Roy was right and they reunite again to fight Monsieur Mala and the Brain. That's going to be really cool, and I can't wait to read it. Okay, next up, Flash number 42. Barry Allen finally gets his speed back. Unfortunately, this is what Gorilla Grodd wanted, because now Grodd has exploited Barry's connection to the Speed Force, so now he's extended his mind control powers to control all the other users of the Speed Force, which at this point include Wally West, Kid Flash, Flash of China, and Godspeed. I really like the way Joshua Williamson has like sort of set up the upcoming arc Flash War with this current storyline. we definitely get sort of the darker side of Barry Allen. And what I mean by that is, once Barry lost his connection to the Speed Force due to Gorilla Grodd, he was like willing to, even though he's told Wally, hey, you know, you're the Flash right now, you should go help them and stop them. He starts to become more obsessed, like, I need to get my speed back, I need it. And it's not really vilifying Barry, but it's definitely making him more unappealing. And I think the real reason why we're doing this is to sort of create the tension between Wally and Barry for Flash War, which is going to come up. And while I don't think that they're actually going to like kill each other or anything, I think it's most likely that their relationship is going to be strained to the point that they no longer will work together. But yeah, I get the feeling that once this current arc is resolved, Wally is definitely not going to want to work with Barry anymore, because I think the way Barry's actions about wanting to, even though Barry feels like he could trust Wally to be the Flash, it would only be temporary in his mind. Like, I don't think he would retire. I mean, it's kind of like how Barry wouldn't retire, if Barry had to like leave town or the Earth for Justice League business, and he could just tell Wally or Kid Flash, like, hey, you know, you guys are in charge, I trust you. Because, and I think the only reason he feels comfortable with that is because he would come back. But in this case, without his speed, Barry is just like not sure if he can really trust his former sidekicks to really protect the city without him. Also, because I do like the way they brought Wally West back into the main Flash title 2 with this arc, and I think it's great. Honestly, if Joshua Williamson wants to write another Flash title featuring Wally West only, I'd be okay with it. That would be great, in my opinion. But yeah, so far this was a great issue for the arc Perfect Storm, and I really can't wait for Flash War, which is going to start in May. So if you're a Flash fan, you should definitely check that out, especially if you're a Wally West fan. Next on my list is Mr. Miracle number 7. In this issue, Mr. Miracle and Big Barda welcome their first child, Jacob. That's really interesting. And honestly, Mr. Miracle is a very fantastic mini-series. It's only going to be 12 issues long. We're on issue 7. I highly recommend that you check this out, but in order to really understand it, go back to issue 1 in order to read all of it, because it's a very interesting read, but it's kind of complicated at the same time. Like, if you've read from issue 1 and you've been following it like I have, it makes sense, but I think it's a bit more of a thinking man's piece, so to speak. But nevertheless, I think it's also a very good parallel to Tom King. The series is written by Tom King, and what this issue kind of felt like is sort of like what he's been writing on Batman since Batman and Catwoman got engaged, in that we've got these superheroes who are just going through like sort of regular day things. Like, he figures out a way to make the general life moments, such as engagements or having a child, relatable for superheroes in a way that just feels like you're not looking at superheroes going through this, you're looking at regular people who are going through this too. Also, I do like how the layout of this series, it's all been 3x3 panels on every single page. It does a great use of that layout. Honestly, Mr. Miracle, I think, is definitely going to be one of the most talked about comics for a couple of years, and if you haven't been reading it, I highly recommend you start from the beginning. Detective Comics number 976. Batman deals with the current psychological states of orphan Cassandra Cain and Red Robin Tim Drake since the events of Batwoman killing Clayface and the disbandment of the Gotham Knights program. Basically, Orphan goes through a psychological analysis with Dr. Leslie Tompkins, and Leslie kind of tells Bruce that he needs to try to make more of a personal relationship with Cassandra, like what he did with all the Robins and such. Like, not just treat her like another ally or sidekick, but just as a person. Also, we find out that Batwoman, Batwing, and Azrael have joined up with the Colony, and Batman also finds out that Tim Drake has sort of restarted, or at least is trying to relaunch a new version of the Gotham Knights program, but Batman says it's a bad idea and tells Tim that it was too early for him to put him back into the field after he came back. And of course, this frustrates Tim, and he leaves the cave, and while gone, he's contacted by Ulysses Armstrong, who offers to show information that the Tim Drake Batman from the Titans of Tomorrow future that we saw a couple of arcs ago had and review it in order to learn what exactly could happen. I really like the scene that I mentioned in the beginning where Leslie advises Bruce to have more of a personal relationship with Cassandra, because it really shows how different Batman sort of treats his allies in a way, because Cassandra was basically an orphan teen that Bruce found, but he didn't really take her in or train her to be a Robin. She was already trained and it wasn't really necessary. So naturally, I think Leslie just wants to encourage Bruce to get to know Cassandra more as a person than just someone else to work with. Also, I really liked how in this issue there was a moment where Batman even acknowledged that he was wrong in putting Tim back into the field right after he returned from being kidnapped by Mr. Oz. I mean, just hearing Batman acknowledge a mistake is just like, whoa, Batman finally admits he was wrong. That is rare and something you will not see, because Batman is usually pretty even when he's wrong, he's still pretty stubborn. Also, I like the idea of the team sort of breaking off, how some of the team broke off into doing their own thing. I feel like the thing that's going on with Batwoman, Batwing, and Azrael is kind of like what we're seeing in the current season of Arrow, where Mr. Terrific, Black Canary, and Wild Dog formed their own team and such. So that was an interesting little parallel I noticed. Honestly, Detective Comics has been a very well-written series. There's a nice balance between the characters that allows each of them to sort of be explored, and each one has a purpose in this book, which feels great. Honestly, if you like the Batman family, you should definitely be reading Detective Comics, and especially if you're a Tim Drake fan, because if I had to like single out one character that I think gets the most attention, it would most likely be Tim Drake. Now it's time for my pick of the week from Marvel. Marvel 2-in-1, number 4. Ben and Johnny take their first steps in locating the rest of the Fantastic Four in the multiverse. However, the first Earth they go to is one where, during the first Galactus adventure, Ben died and Doctor Doom merged with Galactus. Honestly, this is a very fantastic... If you love the Fantastic Four, you should definitely be reading this series, because I like how the first Earth they visit is one that was changed because of a different ending to a Fantastic Four arc, because this title does a good job at sort of respecting and going through the Fantastic Four's history in order to move the story along. And I think it's a good way, if this does lead to an official reunion of the Fantastic Four, it's definitely a good way to review the team's history and remind readers like what makes the Fantastic Four so special and why they were popular. Also, we get a little subplot for the resident genius that Johnny and Ben brought with them in order to help work Reed's device, the Multisect, which allows multiversal travel. Her name is Ratch Nicole, and before she leaves to meet up with Ben and Johnny, we see that she has a sick loved one in bed, and the way she talks to this person, it sort of implies that she's hoping to use their trip into the multiverse to find out a cure for this person. And I think that's very interesting, and it definitely adds a new layer of depth to this character that just appeared in the story, which doesn't really make her feel like just a one-off character, which is fantastic. Also, I did write a written review for this issue on themarvelreport.com. I'll put a link in the description below so you can check that out. It's probably more detailed than what I just talked about, but yeah, if you are a Fantastic Four fan, then you definitely need to be reading Marvel 2-in-1 right now. My last comic, my pick of the week, is Action Comics number 999. One more until 1000. Okay, so General Sam Lane comes to dinner with Lois, John, and Clark. Unfortunately, though, things are still tense between the General and Lois. By the way, when General Sam arrives, Clark isn't at the apartment. Right now, after stopping a meteorite, he sort of goes back to the fortress to do an experiment. And because of the encounter Superman had with his father, who became Mr. Oz, he starts to sort of rethink all the things that Jor-El said, including the use of the Phantom Zone as a prison, because now Superman feels like the Phantom Zone isn't really that effective of a prison, not so much while it does keep people safe, it sort of damages the prisoner, especially when he sort of brings up what the isolation did to General Zod and his family. So Superman frees the cyborg Superman, Hank Henshaw, and tries a different approach, which involves trapping the character in a slightly larger cell, unbreakable, but also giving him a Kryptonian crystal that allows Henshaw to sort of revisit all the happier moments of his life. And basically and in a way to sort of remind Henshaw about his humanity in order to help redeem him. And through this process, Superman then realizes that, you know, what he learned here could probably help with Lois and Sam. So he goes back to the apartment. He doesn't tell General Sam Lane that he's Superman, though. And he sort of talks to Sam and Lois, and he's able to get them to start reconnecting and reforging their relationship. And then the issue ends with the family having dinner, and John asking Sam if he ever wants to go to a ball game, which Sam agrees, which had a very nice ending to it. This was such a fantastic, well-written issue. Dan Jurgens really gets to the core about how Superman's compassion and humanity is what makes him such a great hero. Also, he does a good job showing what Clark has learned from all his recent adventures and everything, and how he's used that to sort of help not just sort of help his life, but the life of his family, his wife, and everything. And also, I really loved how he did it without having to tell Sam that, hey, I'm Superman. Because I really thought when I heard this issue was announced, I thought that he was going to end up telling Sam that he's Superman, but he didn't, and that's great. I'm really glad. But yeah, this is such. Also, in terms of well written, I also like the way he wrote Sam Lane, because he doesn't just make Sam some guy that just hates Superman because he's powerful, but he actually does make Sam's argument a bit more sound and understandable and sort of relatable in a way. Like, as I was reading it, I kind of thought, okay, I can sort of understand why. I can understand Sam Lane's point of view, which was very nice. Overall, after that last arc we just had with Booster Gold, this was definitely an improvement, and I cannot wait for Action Comics 1000 now. It is going to be awesome. But yeah, if you love Superman, you should definitely check out this issue, issue 999. One more until 1000. I cannot wait for that next month. But yeah, this is definitely my pick of the week. That's it for my comic review. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Whether you're an old subscriber or new subscriber, I appreciate the support. If you like this video, remember to subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications when I post stuff. Also, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Links are in the description below. Both my usernames are still Spider-Man1991, so that's easy to find. Thanks again for watching and for your support. I'm Lewis. See you later.